Greetings everyone, how are you? It is Jamaican Tory back with you again as we prepare to discuss another aspect of the constitutional reform process where the JLPNP attempts to turn Jamaica from a constitutional monarchy to a constitutional republic. So I'm asking you to please like, share and subscribe as we get into this brief discussion. So today I'm going to be discussing the topic of king versus court, or you can also call this the king and the court. Either one works for me. Now, the word court has several different definitions, and one, of course, being the court of law, where cases are decided. And you also have the court being the court of public opinion, which is a colloquial term referring to how persons feel in general about a particular issue. And then you also have the King's Court, and this refers to the office of the king and the persons who are surrounding him, such as the Earl Marshal and the Lord Chamberlain and the Lord High Admiral and the High Constable and all these persons. Alright, so there are several different definitions of court. Now, I'm going to be mixing two different definitions of court today, which is of course the law court and also the King's Court, which of course is his advisors and his courtiers. And they're intermingled, and here's the reason why. In Jamaica, our highest court of appeal, and court here means law court, is the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. However, that Judicial Committee is actually part of a larger body which is known as His Majesty's Most Honorable Privy Council, which of course is the second definition of court referred to the courtiers. So you see that there's an intermingling there. And when it comes to our legal jurisprudence, one of the issues that have come up over and over again is whether or not we should still be retaining the JCPC as our final court of appeal, which is the judicial aspect of the Privy Council, which is also a court by itself, in addition to the grander, larger court. Now, when it comes to the debate regarding Jamaica's sovereignty, there always seems to be a link between the getting rid of the crown and getting rid of the Privy Council. And oftentimes we tend to hear that they go hand in hand, which, to be fair, is somewhat of a fair assessment to make. However, I would like to posit a different position whereby I will be repeating the thesis I put forward in an article I wrote in the Observer called "Ditch the Court, Keep the King." The premise of that thesis is that we do not need to become a republic in order to complete our judicial sovereignty, which means the linking from the Privy Council. Now, as far as the Privy Council is concerned, and by Privy Council I mean JCPC, perhaps I should use them separately in order to avoid confusion. So from now on, I will try to say JCPC when I'm referring to the Judicial Committee. So the JCPC was set up in 1833 as the final court of appeal from British colonies, dominions, protectorates, all of that. The JCPC actually has no jurisdiction within the United Kingdom itself, because the UK's highest court was the House of Lords, and now it's the UK Supreme Court. Notwithstanding that, even though the court is not the same, what you tend to find is that the judges on the JCPC and the judges on the UK Supreme Court tend to interchange. So because of that, you find UK judges being the ones to be the final arbiter of our laws. And my position is that we should move away from this system to a system where Caribbean judges decide on our law, finally decide on our laws. And I know the arguments will come. How can I be a monarchist and be in support of a move like that? The thing is, it is because I am a monarchist why I support the removal of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. And here's the reason why I say that. Jamaica, as I stated before, is a constitutional monarchy, which means that we have a king as our head of state. There's often a confusion that seems to make it appear as though because we have the king as our head of state, then we are still a colony. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are a sovereign country. And having the king as our head of state is no threat to that sovereignty. What is a threat to that sovereignty, however, is the Judicial Committee. Here's the reason why I say that. If we should look at the rulings made by the Judicial Committee, then we will see that those rulings are not necessarily in keeping with our interests as Jamaicans. Take, for example, the landmark Pratt and Morgan ruling, where the Privy Council made a ruling that went against our jurisprudence and established what we call a 5-year rule. And that 5-year rule effectively abolished the death penalty de facto, although it could not do it de jure. So now we have judge-made laws interpreting the statutes on our books in a way that they were never meant to be interpreted when the statutes were written. And this was done by an overseas court. And to me, that is unacceptable. So the question then is, if I feel this way about the court, why do I not feel this way about the king, about the monarchy? It is simply this. The king does not interfere in our sovereignty in a way that will compromise our independence in any way. And I know the arguments around there are talking about the king being a quote-unquote symbol of colonialism. The truth of the matter is, those who made that argument, they're just making that argument out of their heads. There is no concrete evidence to suggest that. What there is concrete evidence is to suggest is that the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, in their rulings, are ruling against our interests, as I stated before with the 5-year rule. I would also like to point out that contrary to popular opinion, it is not incompatible for a country to keep the monarchy as its head of state while having its final court of appeal. For example, the very first country to remove the Privy Council as their final court of appeal was Canada. And Canada's allegiance to the crown is very firm. And a matter of fact, the Prime Minister, which by the way is a liberal left-wing Prime Minister, let me point that out, has stated quite frankly that his government is not interested in a republic. And bear in mind, this isn't even a right-wing traditional conservative government. This is a left-wing government. And they are saying they're not interested in a republic. Canada. Then we have countries like Australia, countries like New Zealand, where their prime ministers lean more Republican, but yet at the same time, they are not making any active moves towards becoming a republic. They too have removed the Privy Council. as their final court of appeal, and they did so a long time ago. Turning to our own region, where we have countries such as Belize or St. Lucia. St. Lucia moved away from the Privy Council very recently, which are still both constitutional monarchies under the crown. We do also have republics that have done so as well. And let me interject here to speak about the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice. You can't talk about Privy Council without talking about the CCJ, the discussion being complete. So the idea which came about as far back as the 1970s is that the Caribbean region should have their joint final court situated within the region. And this court was established in 2005 called the CCJ. Several members of CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Committee, has already acceded to this court, both monarchies and republics. So I already spoke about the monarchies, but we also have several republics such as Guyana or Dominica or recently Barbados, which have also acceded to the jurisdiction of the CCJ. However, there is a paradox. I must point out this paradox. The headquarters of the CCJ is in Trinidad. Yet Trinidad, which is a republic and has been a republic from 1976, has chosen not to accede to the jurisdiction of the CCJ, which then tells us that, even though they are a republic, even though the CCJ is headquartered there, they are still not moving toward the CCJ, which then goes to bolster my point, which is that there is nothing untoward to suggest that we need to be linked to the Privy Council in order to be a constitutional monarchy. And it is for that reason why I say we should look at more practical constitutional reforms as far as our judicial system is concerned, instead of continuing on this ridiculous nonsense argument about a president and a republic, which will do absolutely nothing to help the Jamaican people in the long run. All it will do is give the politician a sense of accomplishment to say, yes, I did this. And what I find very hilarious, if not sad, is the fact that the politicians in the JLPNP are running down the idea of a referendum on a republic. But yet at the same time, in order to remove the JCPC, there is absolutely no need for a referendum. They could do it very easily. I must point out, however, that on this one, the JLPNP is not united. The JLPNP says they want a referendum, and the PNP says there is no need for a referendum. The truth of the matter is the JLP's position is very shaky on the matter. On one hand, they say they want a referendum. On the other hand, they say that they're not going to do anything about it at all. Whereas the PNP's position has always been, we want to get rid of the Privy Council and there's no need for a referendum. In this case, and I must point out, in this case and in this case only, I agree with the PNP. We should remove the JCPC as our final court of appeal, and there's no need for a referendum. But that's where my agreement with them ends, because the fact of the matter is, they are still in lockstep with the JLP as far as becoming a republic is concerned. And that is completely unacceptable. Because at the end of the day, well, as far as the rights of the Jamaican people are concerned, that should not be the primary focus. Because we have other areas of constitutional reform that we can focus on. The court is a major one. And this is why I will repeat the position that I have made in my written article, which I will post in the description, that we need to look at removing the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council while still remaining a constitutional monarchy. A republic is unnecessary. A president is unnecessary. If we want to look at areas as to how to define our sovereignty, I suggest we start with the court. Because anybody knows how law works, knows how important judicial precedent is in any legal system. And having a system of the judiciary where the precedent is being set by the JCPC, even though they themselves have told us that they don't want us anymore, that to me is unacceptable. And it is for this reason I say this is the way that we should move forward in defining ourselves as a nation, in defining our sovereignty, in defining our jurisprudence, while at the same time also maintaining our traditions as far as our links to the crown are concerned.